Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at Venus moving into the sign of Scorpio, making an immediate square to Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. Anytime Venus and Pluto get together, it's headlines in the astrological world. Venus-Pluto contacts are pretty intense, dramatic. They can be very erotic and creative. I'm going to give you a list today of 5 things to watch for, and we're going to dive deep and consider this from the perspective of the soul. I'm going to share with you some ideas that I hope will be thought-provoking and really give us a slightly different way of thinking about Venus-Pluto, in addition to all of the normal ways that we're used to thinking about Venus and Pluto, like drama or death and rebirth and love and relationships. That's like, everyone know, if you know anything about astrology, you've probably heard that before, but I hope today will go a little bit deeper. So anyway, that's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell for updates so that you know when we have new episodes or when I'm doing a live stream. Subscribe if you haven't yet. It takes a second and it really helps us grow. We really appreciate it. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. I'm breaking up promotions into parts these days and seeing how that works to just kind of decongest the front end of our sessions. If you go up to the courses page, click on first year course. We are almost ready to begin the next Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic program. It starts on November 15th. It is not too late to register. At the end of today's content, you'll find an informational video telling you everything you need to know about the program. Check out the need-based tuition option. If you're someone who'd like to take the program, but you have to work within a fixed or limited income, or exchange rates are high in another country, please do check this out. It's at the bottom of the first year course page. You'll see the tuition assistance button. Apply now. Tell us your situation. You can pick within a sliding scale the tuition rate that works for you. We try to make sure that no one's priced out of studying astrology. That's really important to us. It's 30 courses on the year. Everything's live, but also recorded, so you can attend the live webinars or you can follow along at your own pace. And again, at the end of today's content, I'll tell you more about that. All right. On that note, let's shift our attention to the real-time clock. Yesterday, we introduced Venus and Scorpio, and I think today we'll continue on some of the same notes by way of the Venus-Pluto square. So the Venus-Pluto square, follows in sort of similarly dramatic fashion. You can see Venus moving into the square. This is Thursday, November 6th. Today, the ingress occurs. Yesterday, we prepped for it by talking about Venus and Scorpio. If you missed that episode, go back and check it out. But anyway, we're going to speed this up by a day. We'll see that the square comes through tomorrow, Friday, November 7th. If we give it 3 degrees of separation, you get it to about Monday, November 10th. And so I would say anything we're talking about today, you will especially notice tomorrow, Friday, but then you could notice it Saturday the 8th. So Friday the 7th, Saturday the 8th, maybe a little bit this evening even. So that would be the broad range in which I would expect to see the effects manifesting. So today what I want to do is, when we talk about Venus and Pluto, the low-hanging fruit for this kind of transit is always the same. Drama in love and relationships, death and rebirth, a Plutonian word in love and relationships, inflection moments in relationships where you go deeper or you get out, unexpected betrayals in relationships, greater depth and intimacy in relationships. These are the kinds of things that we commonly see when Venus and Pluto get together. Intense transformation in friendships around things like women, sisters, daughters, lovers, sex. Sometimes, there'll be Venusian things related to beauty or art or creativity that come up. With Pluto, they can be intense, creative, transformational, and a little bit extra, because that's what Pluto does when it gets in touch with Venus. Today, I want to talk about Venus squaring Pluto from the perspective of the soul. I think what I mean by that is, let's consider what reality is, or what it looks like from the perspective of the soul, because we all have a spirit soul from the perspective of the spirituality that ancient astrologers held, that's moving lifetime through lifetime. Our birth chart in this lifetime, our body, our psychology in this lifetime are just one iteration of the soul's identity. It's had others before, and it will have more to come. That's the basic belief that astrologers in the East and West adopt when considering the information in a birth chart. So if we start from what is a Venus-Pluto square within this lifetime, this body, this ego, the stories that I'm involved with right now, that's where I think those traditional interpretations about change in relationships makes a ton of sense. But if we consider the soul's perspective, an immortal spiritual being that is journeying and going through a process of enlightenment as it travels, I think some of the similar topics take on a much deeper and richer metaphysical quality or meaning. So that's the idea behind this list today, and I hope you'll find it useful. All right, well, number one, the soul, when Venus and Pluto get together, I think we are reminded that the soul is a witness, and the soul needs to be witnessed. Let's get into this at a little deeper level. The word witness is actually fundamental to the language of ancient Greek astrology. The word epimartyria, which is a word that is used when talking about aspects, implies a witnessing from one planet to another when two planets are contacting one another through an aspect, like a trine or a square. The planets are said to be bearing witness to each other. And as they bear witness to each other, their witnessing on a symbolic archetypal level is bearing witness to something about the nature of the soul as it exists in this body in this lifetime. And so even the fact that astrology begins with asking, who is this soul? And the immediate response from the heavens, from the perspective of the birth chart, is a collection of gods and goddesses bearing witness, testifying to something about the nature of this living being in this lifetime. That's remarkable. It suggests that we're not automatons. We are only known by virtue of what other people see in us and say about us. And so that gives us the premise of that gives us a starting point of a relational cosmos, that we are embedded in a living animal and we're part of the living animal, but it's also bigger than us. That simultaneous oneness and manyness is a paradox that is not meant to be solved. It's not like a math problem that's meant to be solved. It's an experience that's meant to be lived. And the experience is talked about in many ways, but one of the perennial ways of describing this experience is the experience of love and of witnessing. That loving each other means bearing witness to one another and seeing each other at significantly deeper and deeper levels, which is to say a soul level. Have you ever felt like someone has seen your soul, has looked into you and really seen you? When people really see us, and I'm not talking about, like sometimes people see us and then they criticize us. Is there anything more painful than that? But I mean, have you ever felt like someone held space for you as a soul and saw you and acknowledged you or pointed something out or just said, hey, as I look so deeply into you, here's what I see? I don't think there's anything that it's like an itch that nothing else can scratch. It's like an itch that only can be scratched through someone sitting and seeing us in a way that we can't see ourselves. We have mirrors. We've discovered that there are certain kinds of surfaces that reflect in a certain way so we can actually see what we look like. I'm sitting in front of a camera and I can see what I look like on the screen if I look over at it. But prior to all that all requires a technology. That all requires some constructing something so that kind of vision can be made available to us. Well, the basic technology of witnessing and mirroring are other living beings. And what's so interesting is that living beings, by witnessing other people, holding space for other people, seeing the soul, seeing something that's deep and real and substantive, it's that act of witnessing that paradoxically facilitates a growing ability to see ourselves. is a very similar statement, that love thy neighbor, treat other people as you want to be treated. You can't tell that your brain can't tell the difference between, sort of giving a hug and getting a hug when you're embracing someone. When we bear witness to other people and really see their soul behind the mask, behind the events and activities, it's really special. I would say my capacity to do this has grown because I have the privilege of reading charts for other people. And so I get to bear witness to their lives and their stories. And as I'm doing so, there will be this really special moment. It doesn't happen all the time. In fact, it's like a game of hide and seek. You never know when you're going to find the soul. But sometimes it pops out, and all of a sudden you go, wow, this is a little spark of conscious eternity in a body sitting in front of me. What a beautiful living being this is. And it's not that I say that necessarily to my clients, but in the way that when that kind of recognition emerges and someone can feel that they're being seen in that way, I don't think there's any greater compliment that we look for or that we can give or receive. Now, the reason that I'm saying all of this is because when Venus and Pluto get in touch, we become sometimes painfully aware of the difference between a superficial ornamentation or presentation of ourselves and the soul level of ourselves. And we become aware of it often by virtue of feedback that we receive in relationships. Maybe that feedback comes in the form of someone telling us they don't feel like we're being authentic or real or honest or truthful. Maybe it comes because we are being honest and real and truthful, and someone says, thank you, I really appreciate it. Or it's painful for someone else to see or experience us being really honest, but it's also cathartic and healing for that honesty to come forth. But the soul comes to know itself by being seen deeply, authentically, substantively. And in being seen by others, we also grow our capacity to see other people. It's the most remarkable thing, but as a parent, I grow in my capacity to be seen as a person by my kids and not just dad, although I always play that archetypal role of father, in almost exact parallel to the ability that I have to listen, be present, and see them. Like I can tell you right now, when I'll just give you an example. I was walking to school with my daughter this morning. She's got some songs she really likes. It's like K-pop and Bruno Mars, and I think it's called like APT or something like that. It's a silly song. I don't get it. It's not my kind of jam, but she really likes it. And she was saying something about how the abbreviation for APT is like apartment. And she was saying, do you think it'd be silly if I started referring to apartments as APTs or APATs or something like that? I don't know. It's just some phrasing from the song, She's like, if I started referring to apartments like the song does, do you think that that'd be really silly or stupid? And I could just feel that what she really wanted me to say was, no, of course not. That's kind of fun. Do you think it's fun? And I just looked at her and I was like, it's fun, right? And she just exploded with a big smile and like hugged me so big. And she was like, I think so too. And that's what I mean when I talk about seeing one another. It's not necessarily like, it doesn't have to be some profound, I see your soul, When we really see someone, it's like we have a way of recognizing and celebrating something about who they are or what they're thinking or where they're at or what they're processing. And you can just see people light up inside when you really take a moment to feel where they're coming from and just be like, I see you. Some of the most powerful moments of transformation, of death and rebirth, of healing happen when we witness. I want to show you something. There is a super famous image from Alex Gray, who's like a psychedelic artist. And I've had the opportunity of speaking with him on several occasions at different events when I was in ayahuasca world regularly. Here's a painting that he did that shows, this is like a psychedelic experience, but you can see all the eyes, all of the eyes. And I think I'm not alone when I say that I think this image is perennial within mystical experiences. This is the soul. This is I mean, not the soul literally, but it's like an image of the soul. The soul is like a tapestry of a million eyes. And it only comes to see itself by virtue of what it sees with authenticity and love. The act of seeing other people in authenticity and love allows the soul to be seen in the same way. If we want to be seen, we have to see. If we want to be witnessed, we have to witness. This is the most profound act of healing, transformation, love, and really every relationship at its core is about this. So consider this as Venus and Pluto get together right now. Who are you witnessing? How are you witnessing? Where would you like to be witnessed? Give it if you want to get it. All right. Number 2, soul medicine is bittersweet. So the word bitter etymologically is also, I think, very interesting. It obviously, it means having a harsh taste, sharp, cutting, can be like angry, full of animosity, cruel. But the word bitter also has a relationship to the word bite. That's interesting. One of the things that I love about that word bitter in sort of historical herbal medicine context is that bitters are often used to combat inflammation. And if we think of inflammation also as just inflation, as something getting too big or bloated or, haughty or even arrogant, something bitter will often happen, something cutting or biting, to bring that inflation down to earth. Venus in Scorpio is a Venus that is in Mars sign and square to Pluto. There will often be very bitter moments, but those bitter moments are not just poisonous, cruel. There can be a real shadow, of course, to Venus, Pluto, where cruelty or anger or hostility in relationships comes forth. Of course, that's a shadow, you could say. But there's also something about bitterness in love and relationships that allows for excessive inflation or ego to just be like drained out. So sometimes we need a little bitter medicine. Now, the word bittersweet it also has a long history as a taste in culinary arts and in herbal medicine and different medicinal healing modalities. Bittersweet medicine is Venus-Pluto medicine, where there's something sweet or beautiful or aromatic or tasty or desirable, but it's paired with just a little bit of bite. Because there's something medicinal in it, you need something alongside of it that makes it palatable. So bittersweet tastes in ancient medicine are often ways of making more palatable something bitter or biting that will also heal. If you think about Venus and Pluto from the level of the soul, sometimes we need just a little something painful but good, something healing but difficult. When it comes to Venus and Pluto, will often be paired with just enough beauty, sensuality, desire, harmony, good fortune, just enough to make the transformation more palatable, to make the healing easier to receive or go through. So most of the time, soul medicine, historically, like the kind of thing that's good for the soul, that is healing for a soul that is sick. What does it mean for a soul to be sick? Often it means for a soul to not be seen, or for a soul to not be taking the time to see and bear witness to other souls. That's how we get soul sick. It's by coming out of love. And what is love? It's seeing each other. And when we see each other from the heart with love, because there's nothing better. When you fall out of that space, you get soul sick. And therefore, we often need bittersweet experiences that pull us back to love, but sometimes there's no way of getting us back to love without a little bit of pain or hurt involved, because we're sick and we have to purge. We have to remove a toxin. Bittersweet medicines are Venus-Pluto medicines. All right, number 3. The soul lives and loves toward death. We think from the heroic sunny day upper world perspective that life is about purpose, accomplishment, growth, consciousness, understanding, victories, achievements, belief, empowerment. These are all sunny day world kinds of things. But from the nocturnal space, which is the space of the soul, every life is a process of death. There's not one perspective that's right or wrong, but they're like inverse perspectives. The underworld experience of the immortal eternal soul that travels lifetime to lifetime through the portals of death, right? Death takes us to the next birth. The birth then pushes us gently down the stream until we reach another death that takes us to the next birth. So from the standpoint of the ongoing river of the soul's transmigratory journey, the soul is here in a sense to do everything it's doing within the context of the way that it will have to let go again. It's a tricky thing to think about, but it's kind of like saying, rather than thinking about what can you accomplish in this lifetime, it's like asking the question, what will it mean to die well in this lifetime? To love well and to die well, to love deeply, profoundly, ourselves, life, others, with a close, there's like a close proximity of consciousness to the reality of death. What does it mean to live with an awareness of your death? How does that change how you live and how you love? If you think about the purpose of this life being the way that you die, and that's, by the way, that is a huge part of how death is handled through the soul's journey through in the bardos, in Buddhism, or the transmigratory process that begins as you age and start to leave the world behind in the later stage of life in the ashram system of India. Like, so many different traditions have a way of thinking about the progression of life being more and less about what you do while you're here and what you accomplish, maybe more of a first half of life, sunny part of life. The nocturnal, the evening stage of life, is about how do I die well? A Venus-Pluto moment can be a moment where you think to yourself, my relationships, my loves, my desires, my attractions, my values, are they in touch with the question of how I want to die, how I want to leave this world someday? It's a different perspective. It's a soul perspective, though. All right, number 4. Beauty and hypocrisy. I am really excited to talk about this. Let me just see if I got to get my notes. Where are my notes? I'm going to pause and find my notes here. Okay, back. I want to talk about beauty and hypocrisy, which is another set of themes that come up quite frequently under Venus-Pluto transits. Now, mostly in my experience, I'm thinking about Pluto transiting someone's natal Venus in their birth chart, and what I've seen in many readings. But I think it's appropriate now as a way of thinking about it as well. Even if it's a faster moving transit, right? It's still applicable. Beauty, what I want to say is that beauty, the way that the soul experiences beauty, defines beauty, pursues beauty, is rarely innocent. And by innocent, I mean it's very complex. So if we think about innocence or naivete, like, beauty is not just a simple topic. It's very complicated. It's very soulful. It's very deep. We claim to value authenticity, yet very often we end up desiring what we are told to desire, meaning the way that different cultures shape and define beauty, we are then told that's what's beautiful and this is what you ought to be attracted to. And often we then have an operating sense of what is funny or what is smart or what is beautiful or what is accomplished. And broadly speaking, this starts to, there's like socially accepted ways of thinking about what's attractive or beautiful or desirable, etc. However, what starts to happen inevitably, it just like has to happen, is that there starts to be a tension between the public ideals that we sort of conform to and private attractions that actually move us but aren't necessarily collectively agreed upon. Or yeah, so it's there's a way that beauty has to work through the tension or even hypocrisy that exists between how beauty is collectively defined and sort of loosely agreed upon. Everyone sort of participates in various consensus levels of what is beautiful or attractive or good or, you know, et cetera. Like there's a socially defined Venus that we all sort of participate in, but then there will have to be some way that we more privately or secretly define what we find valuable or attractive or creative. And of course, we have rebels who will flaunt that. I don't agree with the consensus. I am a rebel. I have my own way of defining what's beautiful. And so some people will take that tension and just, they'll be like, you know, punk rockers about it and very external and overt about resisting social and collective values or, you know, what's beautiful and so forth. But a lot of us are not like overt punk rockers like that. We're not overt rebels. We find it a very risky proposition to be that rebellious, even though we may really admire people who are like, I love Bjork. I'm not Bjork. Look at me. I've got a fucking zip up on. So anyway, the hypocrisy though isn't a flaw. That's the point. It's a human contradiction that creates friction, and that friction becomes a spark of like intimate, private, secret, sort of hypocritical beauty. I'm calling it hypocritical to be provocative, but it is sort of hypocritical. I say, well, this is all, you know, like for example, I like to think of myself as, avant-garde artistically, and I'm doing astrology, which is sort of provocative, and I'm into mysticism and psychedelics and all of this stuff. And yet again, to just be super silly and funny, like, look, I'm wearing a Lululemon fucking zip up. So that's the like all of us have to participate in that weird contradictory hypocrisy when it comes to beauty and taste and so forth. But what I'm trying to say is that there's nothing wrong with that. There's something about that tension that allows for this kind of secret, private. It's almost like some things can't be as interesting and complex and beautiful and desirable if it weren't for that tension and that feeling of being a walking contradiction and being a bit of a hypocrite when it comes to how we define beauty and enjoyment or pleasure or art or whatever. Taste is personal and transgressive. Our tastes are socially policed, and we all allow ourselves to be sort of socially policed. We buy into it because we want to belong, or it's stressful not to, or or we don't think that much even about it. Yet what really touches us or excites us will often deviate from social chords. It's idiosyncratic, it's emotional, sometimes it's shameful. And to admit our personal taste is to risk social disapproval, but it's that risk that we like and we enjoy. And we will often carry that risk privately or with only a few people where we admit, oh, actually, I have this transgressive taste. I don't really care what these people say about this. I find that ugly and I find this over here attractive, but I only tell Karen at coffee, I only tell John and I only talk about it at the gym, so intimacy is an aesthetic act. It's about being seen in ways that defy public presentation. It goes back to the soul as witness. It's as though we dress ourselves up in things that are socially approved of, specifically so that we can play hide and seek and just wait to see, does anyone really see me? Can anyone penetrate my Lululemon? Can anyone see me? So we have to play this game of hide and seek. So beauty, hypocrisy, conformity, resisting conformity, those tensions are a vital part of how the soul looks for and defines beauty, pleasure, enjoyment, all of which are byproducts of it being itself and getting to know itself, part of how it's seen and sees. Finally, we are moths to flames. Point number 5 here that I want to talk about is simple. We like to fly toward things that will burn us, that are bright and interesting and passionate and desirable and intense. And we know there is something that may consume us or burn us, but remember that the soul is an eternal being. What is destruction? What is chaos? What is death? Really, from the perspective of an eternal or immortal soul. We think to ourselves, gosh, the taste I have in men, I'm so self-destructive. And sure, on one level, that might be true. But on another level, is it possible? I mean, I don't know. I don't have the answers, but is it possible from the standpoint of 30,000 lifetimes on planet Earth, let's just say, that at least 4 or 5 of them chasing toxic jimmies is part of how your soul reminds itself that there's nothing fucking at stake. There's nothing to sweat over. And so, yeah, a couple of rounds on the wheel of fortune where you fly like a moth into the flame might just be loosening you up a little bit. Yeah. Now, I don't know. That's very romantic of me. And oh, this is fun. But you get what I mean? The soul is attracted to things that burn, and because there's something about death that puts us more closely in touch with what's real. It's the same tension that exists between social acceptance and private deviance. It's like there's something the soul needs to do. There's things that we need to do for the sake of love, beauty, depth, intimacy, that have to be like, just don't hold on so much. It's not like life is not so precious. It is, but it happens to be so precious that it's precious beyond whether you live or die in a linear temporary body. It's actually precious beyond what, like, any kind of consequence. There's nothing you can do to not be a part of the eternal heart and beauty of reality. There's nothing you could do to get away from that. So don't stress. And, if you need to fly into a few flames, like, that might be part of it. Now, I'm not advocating for being destructive or harsh or cruel, or I'm not, it's not supposed to be like a nihilistic perspective. It's supposed to be one that allows us to shake off the taboos that we're confronted with when Venus and Pluto get together. It's okay to just be an intense soul that needs to remind itself that living deeply is always in and through death. Okay, well, I hope that this was jarring and thought-provoking and all the stuff, all the good things. After I sign off, there's an informational video about the Year 1 program. If you want to come to Nightlight, become a moth to the flame of learning ancient astrology. Let this beautiful, sacred language consume your heart and soul, transform you from the inside out. That is what happens to many people who come study with us. It's what's happened to me. That's why I'm here. That's why I do this for a living. That's why I love it. And that's why I keep coming on here, running my damn mouth. So that's it. I hope you're having a good day. We'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer or, just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that. Unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people, and I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community-loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, if you can attend a few and then one week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, if you want to build that resume and develop the the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program, which is aimed at counseling and psychology. So psychological counseling skills is our third year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1-year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology but also values grounded, everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interests, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you could only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is apply. You fill out the little form. You tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.